If we lose the dollar, it's like losing in a war. The dollar is what makes us strong, warned former President Donald Trump in discussing current events. What infuriated him the most was the French President Emmanuel Macron's pivot towards China. We've lost Russia to China, we've lost Brazil to China, we've lost South Africa, and now our close ally in Europe, France. Macron went to China to kiss Xi Jinping's ass. If I were still president, I would call him up and say, if you do that, I'm going to put a 100% tariff on all French wine. France is a tough place, a highly taxed market. But when he wanted to tax American goods, I called him up and said, 9 o'clock on Monday morning, we're going to be taxing your wines 100% unless you change your decision to tax American goods. So remember that, 9 o'clock Monday morning is the deadline. And on Friday, about 15 minutes later, he called and he said, we've just rescinded all of our tariffs on American goods. But now, after I left office, they put tariffs on our goods. We're losing our alliances. And it's getting worse when French President Macron said in a joint press conference with Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, being an ally of the US does not mean being a vassal of the US, nor does it mean that we don't have the right to think for ourselves. Meanwhile, on the other side, Russian President Putin declared at the end of March that the relationship between Russia and China is at its highest point in the history of the two countries. Russia and China have been tied to each other through good neighborly relations. Our top priority is trade and economy, which is obvious because China is our country's leading trading partner. Moreover, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that the success of the Russia-China talks in Moscow is not a matter for the United States. Look, this is not their business, not the business of the Americans. So what about Brazil? How did the United States lose Brazil to China? Brazilian President Lula da Silva set foot on Chinese soil on April 12, and the focus of the visit will be on trade cooperation and investment calls. While China has become Brazil's main trading partner since 2009, China has also spent nearly $90 billion to import soybeans, iron ore, and riches from Brazil in 2022. Brazil is the second largest recipient of investment from China in Latin America and the largest market for Chinese goods in South America. This time, the delegation led by Lula da Silva will sign 20 different agreements, including a special agreement allowing Brazilian banks to use the renminbi in payments. As former President Trump said, if we lose the dollar, it is equivalent to losing in a world war. So what are the necessary factors for a currency to become an international reserve currency, and does the Chinese yuan meet these requirements? In order for a currency to become a true reserve currency, it must meet the following 5 requirements: stability, wide acceptance, high liquidity, and criteria related to the scale and power of the currency. The Chinese yuan is considered to have met the 4th and 5th requirements, but it still does not meet the first 3 requirements to function as an international reserve currency. Meanwhile, dollar can meet the criteria strongly. However, China still has a powerful weapon, which is the BRICS alliance consisting of China, Russia, India, Brazil, and South Africa, which is stronger than the US-led G7. The GDP of BRICS has surpassed that of the G7. Meanwhile, the G7 consisting of the US, UK, France, Germany, Japan, Italy, and Canada is weakening as France is showing signs of turning its back. Despite the sanctions, Japan continues to purchase oil from Russia. According to a recent report in the Wall Street Journal, Japan bought crude oil from Russia at a price exceeding $60 per barrel, despite the G7 countries imposing sanctions earlier this year. Previously, at the end of 2022, when the sanctions against Russia for its military campaign in Ukraine took effect, Japan also acknowledged the need to continue importing oil from Russia to protect its national economic interests. Thank you for listening. We will always update the latest news and interesting events happening around us. If you find it helpful, please leave your comments below and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for the next episodes. Goodbye and see you again.